If I had to pick one word to describe myself as an automotive enthusiast right now, I think it would be optimistic. I'm really hoping to grow as a car person. I'm hoping to one day have my own collector cars. I think that there's a lot of room right now for a whole new kind of enthusiast and for a lot of new people in this hobby. So optimistic, I think, would describe where I am right now. Hopeful of being a big part of it in the future. I'm Natalie Harrington. I'm a writer and an automotive enthusiast in the Boston area, and I'm a trustee at the Larz Auto Museum in Brookline, Massachusetts. My dad has always been a car guy, so I definitely grew up sort of exposed to that kind of enthusiasm. He's a big fan of Americana, and he really loves hot rods and things like cruise nights and going to those kinds of classic shows. He's an artist, he's an illustrator, and he's a painter. And he grew up, he was one of those people who knew every car and, you know, can get in competitions with people at car shows where they're trying to guess, like, what's the car under the blanket based on just a little exposed corner. That's really his thing, and I think it's partly the visual as an artist. For a long time, I think I felt that to be an automotive enthusiast meant knowing all the stats, knowing all the horsepower, and that was never something that I was that interested in. It really took up until sort of young adulthood for me to decide that and embrace this identity as a car person myself. One of my sort of struggles as a car enthusiast growing up was that I just never really loved reading about cars, and I always felt like I was sort of missing out a little bit on learning about them the way that other people do. And now as a writer, I think that I have this opportunity to try and present cars in a new way that might appeal to people more like me, to sort of create something that is a little different from what we have out there right now, and that is focused on the elements of the automobile that I personally really care about. For me, it's always been more the stories behind the cars. That can be, you know, a personal story. If I've heard about someone who had a particular car and then it sticks in my mind and then I'm excited to see the same thing at a car show, or it can be something more like this was revolutionary at the time because of this particular information. Those that are beautiful or sort of iconic looking or quirky, I like that too. So my family had my great-grandfather's 1952 Chevy 3100 truck, and I really loved that thing. Even as a kid, there are pictures of me washing it as a child. I think it was, you know, it was the smell, it was the look of it. I really loved that truck, and I loved that I could walk into the garage and the whole room smelled exactly like the interior of the truck. When we moved from Syracuse to Pennsylvania, I had to let it go. We just didn't have anywhere to keep it, but I still sometimes cherish a hope of maybe getting it back one day. My first car was an Acura. It was an '89 Acura Legend, which I absolutely loved. That car had been my step-grandfather's, and I remember as a kid asking my dad, "What's the nicest car you ever drove?" And he said, "Harry's Acura Legend." So then when I was in college and my grandmother gave the car to me, I felt like it was the most special thing in the entire world. I used to think that people were like giving me envious glances as if I'm driving a Ferrari around, because I just loved that car so much, and I thought, for sure other people are noticing how cool this thing is, right? I've always had an affection for the Acura brand since then, as well as for Japanese sports cars from that era, which is part of why I always really loved that first generation NSX. I definitely have a thing for the NSX, especially really liked the taillights and even that NSX look Accord from the era, I always thought was really cool. Hi.
Hi, how
I'm
are you?
Natalie.
I'm Steven.
Nice to meet
How do you do?
How are you?
Good, good. Beautiful day. It's winter, but it must be 50, 55 degrees.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. We got so lucky.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have taken the car out.
Right? Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. Thanks for letting me experience your car today.
My pleasure.
I'm so excited. Could you tell me a little bit about what you love about it?
Okay, well, first of all, it's a very iconic car.
Definitely.
You know, it came out in 1991. It was a Ferrari fighter, the Japanese Ferrari. And the interior is like a airplane cockpit. This one is a 5-speed. They later went to a 6-speed. It's a 3-liter. And the tire size increased over time, but the basic car stayed the same. They did change the pop-up headlights. They did go to a Targa. But overall, the look of the car has stayed the same. You don't see a lot of them on the road, nor do you see a lot of them on the East Coast. Yeah. It's really a special car. This one came from California.
Oh.
It's like driving a go-kart. It's a blast to drive.
Yeah, I've heard that about these that, you know, so I understand a lot of sports cars are not so great at low speeds, but these are known to be a little easier to drive.
It's very easy, and the shifter is unbelievably easy. You can do it with your pinky finger. It just slides right into gear. It's very easy. The car revs up. You don't really feel the power until you get into the higher revs. I think it goes to 7,000 or 8,000 RPMs. So right in that 5,000 to 6,000 RPM, you can really feel the power because it's only a 6-cylinder, and that was the knock against the car. Even though it was a mid-engine, which was ahead of its time in many ways, this is Formula One inspired car. And so that's another thing that makes it very special.
Yeah, that's right. I think I've seen the video of Senna driving one. And I understand that Gordon Murray claimed that this is part of his inspiration for the McLaren F1 as well. So it's kind of got Formula One on both ends there.
Exactly, exactly.
Very cool.
So, would you like to go for a drive?
I would love to. Thank you so much.
Great, great.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
But the car is extremely quiet.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like we're in, you know, a high performance, like a supercar.
Yep. Nor a car that's 30 years old.
No, my goodness. There, I can hear it a little bit.
You know, it's slow by today's standards, but it was very quick in its day. Sort of slide into these seats.
It just feels really nice to drive.
Yeah, it's very responsive. I mean, especially if you turn the wheel any little bit of a distance.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of power under my right foot right now. I don't know how exactly it's managing to convey that to me, but I really feel it. Was that a complimentary?
I think so.
I was like, hey, look at that car. The steering wheel reminds me of my Acura Legend. Yep. It was my first car, so.
I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't the same steering wheel.
Yeah. These are beautiful roads, too.
Yeah, they, you know, it's very countrified.
Okay. Woo! I guess we're good. Here we go.
So what did you think?
That was awesome.
Did you like it?
I loved it. Yeah, that was so fun. That was really great. Thank you so much.
We only went into third gear. We didn't even take it that high.
Yeah. I was frankly a little nervous because it's your car, you know.
Of course.
And I've never driven anything, I think maybe quite this powerful. So
Yeah.
it was a really cool experience to try it
Yeah,
out.
it revs up very quickly,
Yeah.
and you step on it and it just takes right off.
Yeah, I definitely had this feeling like I could do anything with my right foot right now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was really, really great. I've always loved Acuras, and it was nice to get to drive the top one. You know, I had friends who knew that I love cars, and I really appreciated that. That was frankly kind of flattering to be seen as a car person who they would mention something like this to, and who would tell me, there's a car museum in Brookline. And I said, what? I have to go check that out. I do meet a lot of people who have never heard of the Larz Anderson Auto Museum or have never been, and I do think it's one of these places where you come once and then you're sort of drawn in. At least that was my experience, and I hope that that's true for most people. It's a really unique collection of original early automobiles that are still living in their original home. And sometimes I think people come to the museum for the events and don't always make it downstairs to see the permanent collection, which is actually really cool. And I highly recommend checking it out. It was really finding the museum that helped me come into my own as a car person and realize that there are all kinds of different ways to be an automotive enthusiast. You don't have to be a gearhead. You don't have to be a speed demon. You can love cars in lots of different ways. So this is the 1901 Winton Bullet. This was actually the first production race car offered to the public, and it's one of only 4 built, and it's the only surviving Winton Bullet. So it's a very special car. It will be going to the Newport Concours this fall, and I'm really excited. Excited to see it there. I'm excited for other people to get to see it. So this is it's a great representative of the museum and everything it has to offer, and I'm really excited that it will be at Newport with the whole crowd there at Audrain. One common question among car people, and a question that I get a lot, is what is your favorite car? Or what's your dream car? And I used to take that almost a little bit as a challenge when I was younger and feel like I had to have a really good answer that would prove how much I knew. And my answer used to be the Fisker Karma, because it was very cool and it was very beautiful and it was, revolutionary at the time. Now it's the BMW 507. It's very aspirational. It's, not many people get to own one. They're incredibly expensive. Absolutely beautiful car and very representative of the sort of pinnacle of the style at the time. And it's absolutely, if I ever made it big, that is the car that I would go for.
Hi, Natalie. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good,
Nice
thank
to
you.
meet you. Thank you so much for having me.
Are you glad to see my red car?
So glad to see you.
Why don't we let you sit in the driver's seat
Ooh, that would be amazing.
and we'll get out of this cold air.
That's a good idea. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. Wow. I just can't believe that I'm actually in a 507.
Well,
This
I'm
is
happy that you are.
incredible. So what is it like owning the most beautiful car?
Well, the only way I can answer it is all the shows and people I've met, they frequently ask me, if you could have any car in this world that you wanted, money no object, what would it be? And it's an easy answer for me because I already own it.
I love to hear that, because I would have the same answer. The exact same answer. This car.
Yeah.
Oh man, I've never been inside one. I mean, I've never even really looked inside one. So
Well, now you have.
yeah, taking this all in.
This car originally came from Venezuela.
I noticed the sticker. Okay.
And if you see the sticker up here, that's because Venezuela, I've been told that this decal was purchased every year as the equivalent of a license
Oh, okay.
or an inspection.
Registration kind of thing.
And what that tells me is the last year that this car was in Venezuela was in 1965.
Okay.
There were about 9, maybe 10 507s that were originally delivered to Venezuela.
Okay.
And this is one of them. When I bought it, it was not running, and we had to push it onto the trailer. I borrowed a trailer that Barry actually had. I took my 2 kids with me to pick the car up.
Oh, that's so cool.
And at the time, my daughter was 8, my son was 5.
Oh.
I did get the car home.
Okay. Yes. So I'm sorry not to get to meet your wife today, but I'd love to know what does she think of the car? Does she love it as much as you do?
She does. Lots of long stories around my wife and this car. Number one, during the course of restoring it, this hardtop was actually in one of the spare bedrooms.
Okay.
I had manifolds that I was baking in the oven because
gosh.
I baked on a particular coating for the exhaust manifold.
Wow.
Probably the quote that is most meaningful. And she said, well, all I ever wanted to do was I wanted to live long enough to get a ride in this car. So, and it's interesting, what does she think of it? Well, her daughter gave her a gift, I guess it was a birthday present, and she was so impressed with this car that one of the chapters she wrote in her Storyworth book was actually our life in 2016 with BMW number 70101, which we now fondly refer to as Miss Scarlet.
Miss Scarlet.
For those of you who are old enough to remember Gone with the Wind, Scarlett O'Hara was the lady that led Rhett Butler on a merry chase throughout her whole life. This car has led me a merry chase through my life. So it is now reverently referred to as Miss Scarlet.
Oh. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I honestly, I like that kind of flat color too on these rather than a metallic.
Metallic, yes.
Yeah. I don't know exactly why, but I think somehow it lets the shape speak for itself instead of reflecting over it. This is just, I love how it's kind of molded in that perfect cockpit shape and everything.
Yeah, the dashboard is actually right up against the windshield, which is very unusual.
Oh, yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
But this is just a whole other level.
Well, I'm certainly glad that you like it.
How could you not?
We're sitting, we're parked or sitting behind the car. It's parked on the avenue, and this lady comes walking along, and she's kind of nonchalant, really not paying a whole lot of attention to the cars. And she stops dead in her tracks right in front of the car, puts her hands on her hips, arms akimbo, and said, "Now that's divine."
That's the ultimate compliment,
It
I
is.
guess. Yeah, I agree. It is divine. For me, it's really the people behind the cars, the stories behind the cars. And in all of my years of going to car shows and hanging out at the museum and loving cars, I've met a lot of people who have built really impressive careers and who I might not necessarily be willing to approach at a networking event or something like that. But at the museum or at a car show, you're just talking about cars. And I would venture to say that anyone can find something to appeal to them in this world. I think cars have something for everyone, and I wish that more people knew that and that more people were exposed to it. That's something that I would really like to be a part of. I kind of screwed up the ending there. Did not stick the landing. I would happily take a Z8, of course. I'm not unreasonable. But anytime one comes up and bring a trailer, I share that on Facebook, just in case anyone's like, "Oh, what will I get her for Christmas?" Like, I talked to a genie and my wish was granted.